Hello, and welcome to the FH Foundation's 2020 FH Community Forum. My name is Kat Davis Ahmed, and I'm the Vice President for Policy and Outreach at the FH Foundation. The purpose of this event is to bring together the FH community and to share the experience of living with familial hypercholesterolemia. We're so glad that you could join us. We'd like to thank our sponsors. Without them, so much of the work that we do at the FH Foundation would not be possible, and we appreciate the commitment that they show to individuals and families with familial hypercholesterolemia. Thank you. This webinar is not intended as medical advice, and it is being recorded. I'd like to invite everybody to please introduce yourselves in the chat, say where you're logging in from, and anything else that you'd like to share. It's really great if you can please choose panelists and attendees. You have to choose that so that everybody can see your posts. So welcome everybody, and thanks for being here. Introduce yourselves to each other. And if you have, we'll have a Q&A session later, and we'd ask you to please put your questions in the Q&A that you'll find also at the bottom of the page. So today we have a wonderful panel moderated by Amy Sturm. Amy is Professor and Director of Genomic Counseling at Geisinger. She's immediate past president of the National Society of Genetic Counselors. And really, Amy is a true leader in the field of familial hypercholesterolemia, and we're grateful for all that she does. She's a great friend of the FH Foundation and a wonderful research partner for both Cascade and the NIH-funded Impact FH program that we are working on together. And we're just really grateful and thrilled to have you here today. Amy, thank you. And I'll let you introduce our wonderful panelists.
Thank you so much, Kat. And I'm truly grateful and honored to be with the FH Foundation today. And I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce our phenomenal panel. You're going to hear some very impactful stories today. You're going to hear from Becky Kellner, Chad Gradney, Jaime Rodriguez, and Alina Wilson. And to kick things off, we really want to have all of you be able to connect one-to-one with our four panelists as they share with all of you their journey to being diagnosed with FH. So I'd like to go first over to Becky, and we're going to ask Becky to share with all of us her FH story. Becky?
Hi there, my name is Becky Kellner. I'm 42 years old. I am a mother of two children, ages 10 and 13. I'm a wife, and I'm an educator at a nature center. I was diagnosed with FH 2 years ago after the tragic loss of my mother, who died early from complications with heart disease. But my story starts earlier. With a known family history, I had a cholesterol panel taken around age 12. My overall cholesterol was over 300, but I was told at the time to watch my diet, and that was that. Fast forward to my mid-20s, I had another panel done again with numbers over 300, and I was put on a statin by my PCP. The concern at this time was ensuring that I got off the medication before having children, of which I did. Not once did any of my care providers mention FH or the genetic reason for having this abnormally high cholesterol. I have filled out many medical forms, and on each one I've noted family history of heart disease. But this information that's put on paper never seems to get addressed. It took the death of my mom, the motivation from me, guidance of some wonderful physicians, and a genetic counselor to put the pieces together. I have sadly passed this genetic abnormality on to my two children, but their path is going to be different than the path of my mom and the many family members who died too early.
Becky, thank you so much. And to start, I just want to say I'm so very sorry for the loss of your mother. I'm sure she was an amazing woman. And while you've really highlighted the missed opportunity that we hear about so often with FH, I'm so happy to hear that you took the steps to find FH experts, get the right care for yourself, and especially your children, because there is so much hope for both you and your children. So next, I'd like to move over to Chad. Chad, could you tell us about your story?
Sure. Thank you guys for having me today. And I just want to thank the FH Foundation for putting on this community forum and spreading the information about the FH disease. My name is Chad Gradney. I'm 42 years old. I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I am a father of a 9-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. To tell you a little bit about my story, back in the year of 2005, I was 27 years old. I started having chest pains and symptoms of shortness of breath. I started going to the doctors and telling them my symptoms. Some of the doctors thought I had anxiety, heartburn. I was in and out of the emergency rooms with chest pains. On the time of presenting to the emergency rooms, doctors would give me drug tests, thinking I fit the profile of a drug user or a street user or something like that. In 2 months before my wedding, in the year of April 2005, I woke up one morning, I found myself, I felt like my heart was gonna explode. My mom gave me a leftover nitro pill that my daddy had, and the symptoms immediately stopped. So from that point, we knew something was going on with my heart. We immediately went over to the emergency room, and I had a heart cath performed, and we found out that I was in serious need of a heart bypass. I ended up having quadruple bypass surgery at the age of 27. From that point before, I had never had my cholesterol checked, even at the age of 27. But I did know I had a strong family history of heart disease. My father had heart bypass surgery at the age of 32. And 6 months before I was scheduled to get married, he basically passed away in my arms at the age of 56. When I finally got my cholesterol checked, my total cholesterol was over 400. The LDLs were over 200 at the time. So I was basically prescribed a statin and sent home at the time after the heart surgery. So I think if I would have been diagnosed with FH at an earlier age in my life, it would have made a really profound difference on the outcome of my future. So being diagnosed with FH can make a difference in your life.
Thank you so much, Chad. And I'd like to just say again to you, I'm sorry about the loss of your father. And I really do think your daddy was looking out for you with that nitro pill. And thank heavens you were able to seek care and make it to the point here where you're with us today. And I also just want to address something you said, that I'm sorry you had to experience the really prejudice and bias against you based on your background that led to this, partly disparity in care that you shouldn't have had to face. And it's not right. And I know the FH Foundation is doing a lot of work to address healthcare disparities for individuals of, different ethnic and racial backgrounds. So thank you so much for sharing that piece of your story today too. I think that's really important to hear.
Thank you.
So let's now move over to Alina.
Hello, everybody. These are some great stories, so forgive me if I'm a little bit emotional, but I'll try to keep it together for us. I want to thank you, Amy, for introducing me, and thank you, Kat, for having me here today. And also thank you to the FH Foundation for having all of us and having this forum. It's really a great opportunity for us to tell our stories. My name is Alina Wilson. I am 45 years old, and I am a software documentation writer. I live currently in North Carolina, and I've lived here for, I'm originally from Romania, and I moved to the United States when I was 23. So I've lived in North Carolina for most of the time that I've been here. I was diagnosed with FH when I was 8. Actually, my mother at the time was the head of the military hospital lab. And she, at the advice of my pediatrician, she ran a lipid panel on me and a liver panel. And she was pretty convinced I have some form of FH due to the fact that my father's side of the family, we knew that their side of the family had FH, and they already had a lot of complications from it, a lot of heart disease, and also several strokes. My grandfather had a massive stroke when he was 48, and then another one when he was 50. So she was pretty sure that something was affecting my liver. My cholesterol at the time when I was 8 was, my total cholesterol was 720. My LDL was 560. So with those kind of numbers, this was in Romania, 37 years ago. It was pretty much a death sentence. We had no medicine available there. We had no therapies available at that time. So pretty much the doctor said, there's nothing they can do for me. They will just wait and see how it's going to affect my body. I started having heart disease at the age of 19. And because my levels of cholesterol were not managed, the heart disease kind of advanced over a period of my life. At 23, I moved into the United States and I started to have access to care. I started being on statins, but most than controlling the numbers, which were never normal, even on statins and ezetimibe initially, they were never normal. They started monitoring my heart really closely because, like I said, I had advanced heart disease. When I was 40, I had an open heart surgery where my aortic valve, my ascending aorta were replaced. I had a quadruple bypass surgery, and also my aortic arch was repaired. About a week after the surgery, I also had a heart attack, and that damaged my heart muscle even more. After that episode, I learned about the PCSK9s, and since then I've been on them. The levels again have not been normal, but with the help of that, and recently with the help of a new medication, I have also been able to get my cholesterol numbers, at least my LDL, around 115 to 150. Right after that surgery, I met the FH Foundation. I actually knew about it before then, but I got the opportunity to be there with them, and I learned about genetic testing. And after that meeting, I was 41 at the time. I was genetically tested, and the test came back as homozygous FH. So it took pretty much from 8 years old until 41, so 33 years time to diagnose me with the right form of FH, which was homozygous FH.
Alina, I mean, your story is remarkable. You've really come from across the globe and finally got your diagnosis in your 40s of homozygous FH. And it's pretty amazing, looking at you today, you look so wonderful and so healthy. And we oftentimes talk about how FH is an invisible disease. And how do we, think about that and raising awareness? Because I think so many people would look at you, a young, healthy woman, and never think about this. So thank you so much for sharing your story and helping raise awareness of not only FH, but homozygous FH as well. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's now move over to our fourth introduction and introduce Jaime.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank the FH Foundation for picking me to be one of the panelists. And I'd like to share my story today. I'm Jaime Rodriguez. I am 41 years old. I am a father of 3 little girls. I still call them little because they're always going to be my babies. But the oldest one is 12, one is 8, and the other one is 5. We pretty much, the family has been healthy, and to the point where when I had my second child, we noticed that my second child was born. She was very healthy when she was born and everything. But we noticed that when she was born, when she was about 3 years old, we noticed a bump into one of her elbow. And we didn't think too much about it. It was just a small little bump. So we went to a pediatrician, and we asked the pediatrician what this was. And basically at that time, he said it was just something not to worry about. It's probably something simple, and it would probably go away on its own. So we didn't think too much about it. We went back home and waited a few months. Things seems to be normal. She had no issues. She had basically no complaints about it. But then we noticed that all the bumps were coming out. She was getting bumps on her knees, her ankles, between her fingers. Uh, and then we decided we need to go back and find out what this is. We went back to the doctor and we said, listen, we were here a few months back and you told us that this will eventually go away, but now we're getting more and more and they're actually getting bigger. And we noticed that they were just very small, but they were getting bigger and bigger within time. It wasn't fast. It took a while for them to get bigger. So when the doctor saw that again, he didn't know too much about it. I mean, I wish we could have gotten a better answer at that time, but he didn't know a lot about it. Like I said, it was just her pediatrician. He couldn't diagnose what this was. So we would prescribe some cream. He said just put some cream overnight and we'll see how this goes. And they even tried to burn this bump with they put like a very cold spray on her to see if it would actually fall off, and it didn't. So, but we waited and waited patiently to see what this was because we didn't know what this was. And a year later, now these bumps are basically all over the place. Now they're in her knees, her elbows, her fingers. They're everywhere, and they're getting bigger and bigger. We went back to the doctor. This is about 2 years later. She was about 5 at this point, and but we needed some answers. We didn't know what this was. What we came up with the pediatrician said, why don't we let's refer her to a just to a specialist to see what we can to see if we can figure this out. So we went to a cosmetology first, and what they said is what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of the bumps. We're going to send it to a lab and see what this actually is. When they sent this to the lab, they came back and they said it was actually juvenile xanthogranuloma, which is another form of xanthoma, but they're benign. They don't hurt you. They don't have any effect in your life, according to what we were told. And the same thing, they said, don't worry about it. Usually they'll disappear on its own. We were still not quite right with that answer. We said there's no way. But we did wait a few months because they assured us, don't worry about it, you're gonna be fine. A few months later, she was about 8 years old now. Well, that's when we went back to the cosmetologist. She was about 5. So we waited a few months. I would say she was close to 6 years old at that point. When we went back to the dermatologist again, they said, okay, we're gonna have to do another biopsy to see what this really is, because they're not going away and they keep growing and getting bigger and bigger at this point. We got a second opinion, and it finally came back, and they realized that this was actually cholesterol deposit. I mean, we were stunned with this information because we said, well, how can a child, so young have cholesterol? Usually children don't have high cholesterol. Usually that goes, within time, you get older. If your diet is not good enough, then you develop, high cholesterol. So we were kind of shocked with this information, even though in the past, myself, I have had high cholesterol throughout my life, but it wasn't severe where I would think that this is what this was. So when it came back with the knowing that this was cholesterol deposit, they decided to do a blood lipid test, like a blood work, to find out where her actual cholesterol was. When the result came back, I was called into the office, and the doctor came in with a few other people and kind of scared me because I'm like, okay, well, what's happening here? When she told me the result of the blood work, I was shocked. Her total cholesterol was over 900, and her LDL was actually could not be measured because the machine that they used could not measure the total cholesterol at that point for her LDL. I was shocked. I mean, from that point on, I felt hopeless because I didn't know what to do at this point. I don't know how children will be treated with this condition. So I remember crying all the way home, crying basically for days, thinking about what was going to happen. But we were referred to another specialist, and which was a cardiologist, and basically she was put on 10 milligrams of Crestor, And within about a month, she was prescribed a second medication, which is Zetia, 10 milligrams as well. And we've been basically trying to reduce her cholesterol with this medication. She was also prescribed a third medication, which is cholestyramine, which is 2 milligrams. We mix that into orange juice, and she would take that every night as well. Short story, her cholesterol from 900, it went down to about 700 and change. We were also informed of the FH Foundation, which has been a blessing to us. I mean, without the FH Foundation, I don't know where we would be at this point. Um, they they um, they gave me a lot more hope, finding more information about this condition and things that we could do to actually get my daughter under control. So through the FH Foundation, I found all the resources which we're doing now, and at this point we're working very hard to get this down to a normal cholesterol. Um, but thanks to the FH Foundation, I found another source which is actually working with my daughter right now, and with hopefully we should be able to get it down to within the 400 if everything goes well. But it's been hard for us. I mean, this is new. We didn't know what FH was until we found this out, and it's been devastating for our family. I mean, we work hard every day to get this under control, and we basically we didn't know where to go. But like I said, thanks to the FH, here we are today, and we have high hopes that everything will be fine.
Jaime, I just have to say what an amazing father you are. You knew, you had that parental gut instinct that something was not right, even though it sounds like several, healthcare providers saw the xanthomas and didn't think FH. And I know you'll never stop fighting for your daughters. And I know you've already made a huge deal of change in your daughter's life by getting her cholesterol so much lower already. And I think your message of hope for all individuals with FH is really important. So thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you.
So now we'd like to move on to our first question for our panel. And I'd like to start with Chad. And the question I would love for you all to tell us about is, what was your aha moment that made you realize the importance of taking action for your FH? So Chad, what was that aha moment for you?
My aha moment was actually a game changer for me and life-saving. It actually took 7 years for me to get diagnosed with the FH diagnosis. Back in 2012, I found myself back in the emergency room with angina. Doctors had no answers of moving forward as a treatment plan. And basically, I was put on a heart transplant list. That basically was the only option they had for me. I was a new father. I think my son at the time was maybe 18 months old. And my wife and I, we decided that that was not the life that we were going to live. This just was not the future that we were planning for. So we started reaching out to personal contacts, family members, anybody that can help us with my situation. And to be honest with you, telling some family members bye because we just didn't know if I was going to actually leave the hospital or not that day. So my wife called her uncle, which is a doctor. He actually was at the American Heart Association conference in Dallas, Texas at the time. And they told him what was going on. He reached out to a friend of his who was a cardiologist at Johns Hopkins. And she agreed to take me on as a patient if I can get to Johns Hopkins. So at that point in time, it was, we were fighting for my life. So my wife and I, we booked tickets. We went up to Johns Hopkins for 3 days. And I was ran through a gamut of tests. And I met with a lipidologist, Dr. Peter Krivovich. And within the first 20 minutes of our meeting, he diagnosed me with the FH disease, just from literally talking about my family history. And from that moment on, I was put on a very aggressive medication treatment. And within, I started looking within the hour or two, my wife started looking up just familial hypercholesterolemia, and we came across the FH Foundation, and we got engaged with the FH Foundation back in 2013, and that's when I met other people like me, because at the time I felt like I was alone. Basically, I was given a statin within those 7 years and just sent home, and within those 7 years, I found out that 3 of my 4 bypasses basically had failed. So I was basically back to the drawing board with my heart condition. But after that aggressive treatment, I was given I was put on 2 statins, ezetimibe, and I was introduced to the PCSK9 inhibitor, which made a difference in my life. Upon that aggressive medication treatment, my LDLs became under control. I think my total cholesterol at the beginning of this year was 71. So that made a big difference for me. I have not had a ER visit or a hospital stay over since the year of 2014. So being diagnosed with FH and being put on this aggressive treatment has made a world of a difference in my life.
Wow, Chad. I mean, just the fact that your wife's relative, lucky enough to actually have a physician in your family or in her family, and then that they just happen to be at the American Heart Association meeting and have some colleagues and, networking. Yet you, as a young male at age 27, having heart disease, that should have immediately made someone think FH, in the medical field. And so again, thank you for sharing your story, hopefully, and making all of the medical community realize that when you see a young male with heart disease, automatically you should be thinking about FH. And I'm glad that you had this aha moment, which essentially sounds like states away, finally getting to that FH expert and advocating for yourself and your own health and saying, no, this isn't going to be my life. And I think that's really amazing that you just kept fighting for yourself.
Yes.
So, well, let's now move on to Alina. What was your aha moment?
Thanks, Amy. I thought about, while Chad was talking, I thought about that, and I feel like having been diagnosed at the age of 8 and knowing the history in my family, I feel like I've had an aha moment. My entire life has been an aha moment, right? Of course, it was the first shock of hearing the diagnosis was big, and my family didn't expect that my disease was going to be that severe. And so that was that first step where it just kind of made me realize I'm different than everybody else, and I will have different needs than everybody else. 2 other moments that I can pinpoint in my life are, so at the age of 8, I was told, you're probably going to develop disease in your teens. You probably are looking even at passing, dying in your mid-20s. There's nothing we can do for you. And of course, as an 8-year-old, you don't understand that. You ask your parents, what does that really mean? But we did have my grandfather in the family. And by that time, he was bedridden with his 2nd stroke, and he never recovered from that. He died at 62. And my mom explained it very simply, saying, well, do you see what grandpa is going through? And do you know what he has? And I kind of knew what he had. And I said, yeah, sure. And she said, well, you have what he has, and your disease is going to look the same as his, except yours is going to be twice as bad and is going to come much sooner because your levels are twice his levels. So that was a big shock moment for me, because and I'm a very stubborn creature, and so I thought, I didn't accept that. I thought, there's got to be something in this world somewhere that somebody can do for me. And I heard the doctor say that there are treatments in the world, in the Western world, but we just didn't have access to them at that time. My second moment in my life is when I moved to the US. And by that time I had heart disease, and my focus was not so much the numbers. Excuse me, I did want to get the numbers down. I knew what the numbers being so high meant. At that time, my LDL was around 500. And I wanted to get my numbers down, but more than anything, I wanted to get my heart in control, and I wanted my heart to be healthy. And so that is really when I moved to the US, really launched my fight for my heart, really, and just understanding how much damage I've done to my heart at that point, and how much arterial damage I've done to my arteries, because my carotids are also stenotic, and also my abdominal aorta. And so I wanted to just understand what's going on in my body. Like you said, this is an invisible disease. And so I wanted to understand, okay, what's in there that I need to, be proactive about, and kind of find some treatments that will prevent this from being fatal one day. And so that was a big step for me coming here, getting on some drugs. They are the first thing, we played with the statins for a while because no statin worked perfectly. So we landed on one that brought the levels down the most. And then later on, about, I want to say maybe 10 years later, they added the ezetimibe, and that made a little bit of a difference as well. But even then, my LDL was still around 260. And so after my heart surgery and after coming to the FH Foundation, my third moment in my life is when I really got diagnosed with homozygous FH. And that made a whole difference, not just for me, but also for my family. Up until that point, I believed that only my father had the gene, and only his side of the family had the gene. We never even looked at my mom. My mom's mother was fine. We knew she didn't have FH, but my mom's father died when she was 7. And we knew pretty much nothing about his family and his history. So we really didn't suspect my mother. My mother's cholesterol was high, but it was not as high as my dad's. It was around like the high 200s. So she always thought, oh, I just eat badly and I don't exercise, and that's probably what it is. She was never overweight, but she just thought, it's just my lifestyle. It's not FH. It's not what you guys have. And so when I was diagnosed with homozygous FH, 2 things happened wonderful for me and my family. First of all, the doctors became more aggressive with my treatment, and all of a sudden it opened up the door for treatments that were only advisable for homozygous patients and not heterozygous patients. And so that opened opportunities for me for treatment. And they also were more aggressive with numbers. So now they were saying, okay, your goal is not 110 for your LDL, which is normal. Your goal is 70 or lower, or even 40 and lower, because of your risk factors and because of your advanced heart disease. And the second thing that the diagnosis did was help my family. We understood that my mom also has the gene. And then my mom is 67 right now. She hasn't been medicated for cholesterol, but she's getting her heart under control. Her heart has advanced disease as well. But more importantly, my sister, who's 3 years younger than I am, started seeing a cardiologist, and now she's been seeing them regularly. They've done all sorts of tests just to make sure she doesn't have disease. She is on a statin right now, and it's doing well. And also she was able to diagnose one of her children. She has 2 boys, and one of them, who is now at 9, was diagnosed also with FH at the age of 6. They do live in Canada, and so their treatment path is a little bit different than the United States, and what's allowed for children to take, and what age is acceptable for treatment. But at least she knows, and at least she knows that when he is becoming eligible for treatment, he will start from the beginning, and he won't have the disease as advanced as some of our people in our family.
Wow, I mean, it's really impactful to hear not only how that FH diagnosis was so important for you, but also several of your family members. And, I'm thinking back to what you said too about when your mother sat you down and, really just compassionately, very directly though, shared with you this information about his history and how yours would be even that much more severe. And I love what you said. It's reminding me of what Chad said too. No, that I'm not going to accept this, and fighting for yourself, seeking out treatment for yourself. And so oftentimes when we talk with individuals with familial hypercholesterolemia, they might think, well, this is just in my family. There's nothing I can do about it. And, it couldn't be farther from the truth, because there's so many things you can do to prevent the heart disease and stroke associated with FH. And so thank you so much. And so I'd like to now move over to Becky. And Becky, could you please share with us what was your aha moment?
Thank you, Amy. My aha moment is super clear. I was sitting in the office of my genetic counselor, and I had gone through a very thorough family history with her, and she had ordered some blood work, and I finally got a word to describe what my family has been going through for generations, and that was the FH diagnosis. My children were then immediately screened and also got their FH diagnosis before ever even having a lipid panel done. With a known family history, my children should have had a standard lipid panel at age 2 by their pediatrician. And if that had been missed, it should have been done at age 8. And yet again, it was another opportunity that was missed, and it just led to these horrible family stories. Jillian Osmore was my genetic counselor, and she was able to explain to me how the gene is passed down through the families and how it wasn't about what I was eating, but about my genetic makeup. It was at this meeting I realized that by treating my cholesterol and my children's cholesterol, the story of our family could be different. My genetic counselor changed my life and connected me to Dr. Mary McGowan, who is an FH specialist. Dr. McGowan introduced me to the FH Foundation, where I've become an advocate. It has allowed me to spread awareness about cholesterol amongst my friends and family, and also support others who have FH.
Becky, as a genetic counselor myself, that is so meaningful to hear. And I visualized you just sitting there in that room after so many years. I mean, you knew when you were a child that you had high cholesterol. I can't imagine that feeling you must have had when you finally heard the words familial hypercholesterolemia, and how that crystallized everything for you and really allowed you to take action for you and your kids. What an amazing moment for you. I'm so happy it happened after so many years. Thank you, Becky. And let's finish this one up now with Jaime. Jaime, what was your aha moment that made you realize the importance of taking action for your FH?
My
and for your daughter's FH as well.
Yeah, my aha moment was definitely when I heard of my child's result. When we were sitting at the office and they came with this piece of paper and they showed it to me, I was like I said, I was shocked at this point. I've learned that if we didn't do anything about this situation, bad things were going to happen at an early age. Like I said, she was only 8 years old when she was diagnosed, just like Alina. That's why her story reminds me so much of what we're going through right now, because at that age, you don't think that a child so young is going to have to go through all these aggressive treatments, because that's what we were told. You know, they said you have to move on with this. You have to start treating her, and it has to be aggressive because her cholesterol is so high at this point that if it doesn't get treated, you know, it's only going to take a few years until you start seeing, you know, side effects of this situation. And we realized that things had to be changed. You know, we had to go very aggressive with this situation. We could not go home and sit back and relax and wait, you know, for things to happen. We had to make things happen at this point. We met with a few specialists. Right now, her specialist is Dr. Turpin, which has been great with the situation that we're going through right now. Even though this doctor, this was her second case with having such a patient that had such high cholesterol. The patient that she had before we did, it wasn't as young as my daughter. She was like 15. So seeing my daughter 8 years old, even her was shocked with this situation. She's like, well, I can't believe this, but we're going to work together to get this resolved. We're going to try to see what we can do. I was sitting in her office one day and she tells me, listen, Jamie, me and you are going to have to work together with this, because, you know, I'm going to do my part in trying to get your daughter treated and get her cholesterol down, but I want you to do your part too. If you find anything that I don't know about, let me know, because we need to work together with this situation. And right away, we started with, like I said, we started with medication. We started with one medication, and then we moved on to a second medication. Then we moved on to a third medication. And that's how we've been able to reduce her cholesterol to a point where it's still not normal, but is a progress that, you know, every medication that we add on and we're able to lower it a little bit, it's a progress, you know, it's something. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid having early heart disease, running into a situation that knowing that if we could do something about it at this point, then we wouldn't have to deal with this in the future. But also, because of Dr. Turpin, I learned of the FH Foundation, and we went on that too. And like I said, the FH Foundation has been a blessing to our family too, because we have learned so many different ways too to fight this disease. And that's where we're standing right now. And we're doing everything we can, everything that we can do. And if we find something new that comes out and we can do it, we go for it, because that's the only way that we're gonna actually, you know, provide this to my daughter, and make sure that she's able to live a longer life. And that's what we're doing. We're working really hard at this, and we'll continue to work hard at this until we can.
Well, I think, you know, your comments make me think of a few things. Again, finding that FH expert was hugely impactful for you and your family. And then staying, you know, up to speed on all of the latest and greatest advancements in the area of FH treatment has also been very important for you and your family. And just to make sure all of our attendees know, you know, the FH Foundation has their Find an FH Specialist tool, and they also always have information about late breaking treatments. And so I'm really, again, happy that you were able to find that information. And I hope that everyone with FH can do, you know, the same as you. And so, Kat, at this point, I wanted to see how many questions have come in from our audience, because I have another question, but I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to take some key questions from the audience. So, Kat, would now be a good time for you to look at those audience questions?
Absolutely. And I'll invite people also who are listening to please submit your questions into the Q&A that you find at the bottom. But I'll start with a comment, because I really appreciated it, from Dr. Mutaz in Iraq. FH patients really need the best care from all of us. Patients in Iraq were completely neglected until they started their efforts there. And it's really been amazing to see what they've been able to accomplish for people with familial hypercholesterolemia in Iraq. But his message is we need to support each other to serve these brave patients. And he has a message that you are all brave and great, and we're here to support you all. So I just wanted to make sure to share that and to show our appreciation for people really joining us from all over the world and the amazing efforts that have been made. And I think, and so we have a question for Becky, and that is the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends, as you said, Becky, the targeted screening of children and families with FH at age 2 and universal screening of all children between ages 9 and 11. But we also see that sometimes when we've looked at the data, that the rate of pediatric screening is like at 5%, and at most maybe 25%. So what advice would you give pediatricians, and I would add maybe advice to parents too? That's for Becky.
That is such a great question. So this was a marker that was missed in my family, in my children's care. Having a family history of heart disease, they should have been screened at age 2. That was missed. And then they should have just had a general cholesterol panel done later in life, and that was missed. You know, your time in the office with a pediatrician is really limited, and you have a lot of things to talk about your child's development and about their growth and what's happening in your family. I think it's silly to be complacent, to just assume that your pediatrician knows all the things that need to happen. And I think it shouldn't be luck that your family happened to have a cholesterol screening. I encourage every pediatrician to visit this, because if you can diagnose a child young, you can diagnose an entire family. And it is so important for these children to get treatment early to prevent early heart disease. So don't forget to look at the forms of family history, and please order a panel for these young children who are coming into your office.
That is a great message. Another question was if any of you have been put on a PCSK9 inhibitor while having the PCSK9 gene, and that might be a little too specific and maybe a little more detail than you want to share in this public forum. But I think it is an interesting question about the effect of a say third or fourth line therapy, and if there's anything you want to say about what knowing your genetics, the impact that that has had. And Amy, I don't know who do you, I think that might be Chad mentioned the PCSK9 inhibitor, and so did Alina.
And it's very well possible that no one has, a genetic variant in PCSK9 since it is one of the more rarer causes of FH.
Yeah, my gene that has the problem is an LDL receptor gene.
But the PCSK9 inhibitor, it works for you, and
yeah, I'm not. Yes, the PCSK9 inhibitor does work for me. Yes, wonderfully.
I think that's so important, Amy. That what I think we've heard here is also the importance of when you get your genetic, if you get genetic testing and you get your results, to really speak with a genetic counselor who understands, so that they can explain, for example, that this drug doesn't only work for people with that gene, it works for people with other genetic variants for FH.
Yeah, absolutely. And a genetic counselor can also just help, like Becky talked about, making sure that everyone in the family who is at risk can find out, yes, did I inherit FH, or no, did I not? And that information can be so impactful and helpful.
Mm-hmm. So someone else asked, her brother and she were diagnosed at age 9 months with homozygous FH, and started apheresis at 9 years, have been taking statins. The levels are under control, but in spite of that, her brother had open heart surgery at the age of 26. Shows the impact really of homozygous FH, even with the same treatments. Is there something we're missing that has a huge impact? And so I think, with our panelists here, you're not medical professionals, but speaking from your own experience, maybe Alina could answer that. And then I know somebody had a related question for Jaime about whether you'd considered apheresis for your daughter.
Yes. So, so is the question, have I considered it, or
so this person doing statin and apheresis, what else are you doing that helped get your numbers down, I guess, is really ultimately the question.
Got you. Apheresis was offered to me probably almost as the first line of treatment when I first moved to the US. I was 23 at the time. And I didn't know anything about it, never read anything about it, had no idea what it was. And when the doctor explained to me kind of what it is, I didn't want to do it. And I don't know if you want me to get into why I didn't want to do it. Basically, it was quality of life, and I didn't feel like the benefits from it were long term. The way I understood it, I wanted something that I can take every day. It wouldn't affect the quality of my life, and at least, like I said, this is just a personal choice. That is the choice that I made for myself. I know a lot of wonderful people that have done apheresis, and they're having wonderful lives and full lives. So this was just my choice. I did have heart disease even after I brought my numbers down, but my numbers were never normal. So at the time when I had heart disease and I had cardiovascular disease as well as atherosclerosis elsewhere in my body, my LDL was still around 360. So it was still very high, even with a statin and with ezetimibe. At the time, we didn't have the PCSK9 inhibitor. There were other drugs, but they were either not recommended for heterozygous, and not knowing exactly what I had, I wasn't accepted on those drugs. I wasn't prescribed those. There were other drugs that, again, I just didn't want to take them for personal reasons. Now, can you do more? I heard in the question, can you do more? And the numbers are really important, but what I can tell you from my experience is when I started the PCSK9, my numbers were cut in half pretty much. So from 360, they came down to around 180, 190, which was great for me. Again, not normal, and that's the LDL. So that was not normal for me, definitely with the heart disease is not. But what we have noticed is that they are doing ultrasounds of my carotids every year. And 2 years into, and every single year I went in, the disease was more advanced. So before the PCSK9, the disease on my carotids was even more advanced. 2 years after doing the PCSK9, my carotid disease had stopped. So there was no additional disease, there was no advanced disease in it. Now, of course, they tell me, we can't promise you that that's the same thing that's happening in the arteries of your heart, but it's just logical to assume that if the arteries of your neck are looking better on these numbers that you managed to keep down so far, then it's logical to believe that, you know, the damage, I mean, your heart is probably healthier than it was when you were taking these 3 drugs combined. So the number, that's why the numbers are important, is our only indicator that whether the disease, the risks that we have with this disease are going to be high or low, or are gonna, you know, you have more or less disease. That's just the way I understand it, at least. So I hope that answers it.
So I think in addition to you've added the ezetimibe, the PCSK9 inhibitor, anything else?
Yes, and I did add the bempedoic acid just this year because it was approved this year. So I added that. So right now I'm on a 4-drug therapy with the statin and the ezetimibe, PCSK9 inhibitor, as well as bempedoic acid. And with that 4-drug treatment, my LDL is somewhere between, I mean, we've done it twice so far, and one time it was 120, one time was 115, and one time was 150. So it's a little bit better than 180 and 190.
So I think the great message there, and I would like to let everybody know, on our website we have a section on available treatments and also on clinical trials, and you can learn more about what all the treatment options are there. And I think people find what works for them, right? We're lucky to have choices, and I say we because I have FH too, but so thank you so much for sharing that. And I know, Amy, we need to get to your final question. So I want to thank everybody for the questions and for your answers.
Thanks, Kat. So our final question today is, we'd love to hear from everyone. What is your final takeaway that you feel is so important that everyone needs to know about FH? So Chad, can I please start with you?
You're on mute, Chad. Chad's on mute.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with Becky, and we'll come back to Chad.
Hi. So my closing remarks are these. Heart disease took my mom so fast and so early. She left behind so many unfinished things. She left behind unfinished needlepoint projects, gifts that were not wrapped or given. But most importantly, she left so early, I have unanswered questions and things I didn't get to talk to her about. But this doesn't need to be the story for people with FH and families with heart disease. If you are in the medical field, please take a moment to listen to your patient's family history. Look at the forms that are filled out and make a decision to do something about it. If you are a parent, advocate for your children. Ask your providers for a lipid panel, especially if there is a family history. And if you already have FH, know that you are not alone and keep advocating and telling your story.
Thank you so much, Becky. Chad, are you able to
Yes.
share? Thank you, Chad.
My something I want to share with everybody, and I would like for everybody to take care, is I would want everybody to know that there is people with FH like myself and the people on this panel out there, but we are not getting the diagnosis that we need to understand the condition and to take care of ourselves and our family members. To all the doctors, you can help people like me access the care that we need by looking for FH and when you're recognizing and diagnosing your patients with it. I wish my father had that opportunity so we could have had a shot to have had a chance to prevent heart disease in our family. I would like to now thank the doctors that I do have a chance on preventing this heart disease in my family and advocating for myself. And now that my family has this opportunity for prevention, we can try to end this heart disease in our family. I want to thank the FH Foundation for being on the forefront of helping put out the information with this disease and helping combat and putting forth the treatments that are available for everyone. And I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story with you guys. Thank you.
Chad, thank you so much. I mean, I think your message of hope is so important, and you really can prevent and end heart disease in your family if you have that FH diagnosis and have the right treatment. So that's a majorly important take home. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Alina, can you please share with us your final take home message?
Sure. What I can tell people, so I'm addressing different kinds of people here. Hopefully they're all in the audience, or some of them are in the audience, but if you don't know you have FH, but you know your family's history, it is very important, and it's where you start. So if you know your family history, you know you have an aunt or an uncle, or even a parent or a brother or sister that has had heart disease early in life, or a stroke early in life, please pay attention to that and ask your doctors to follow through with that. Understand your family history and know that one of the risk factors for that early disease could be cholesterol, and make your doctor understand that and teach your doctor. What I've learned is that not, unfortunately, all the medical professionals are familiar with this disease, and it's very hard, just like Amy said earlier, it is an invisible disease, and sometimes it's very hard to show up in the office. And when I was in my 20s, you know, I was very skinny, very petite, and they looked at me and they just didn't believe it. And so a lot of doctors were like, well, that's your genetics. There's nothing really we can do medically. As long as you feel fine, we're fine. It is not fine. And just understand your risk, understand your numbers, and understand the connection between the two. And you are the leader of your healthcare. It's not the doctors. The doctors are wonderful and helpful, and they do get trained for these kind of things, but they will also need to pay attention to you as an individual and to your own story. So share that with them. Another thing that is really important is don't ever lose hope. If there's nothing on the market right now, all of us respond differently to everything that's on the market right now. We might not respond ideally to what's out there, but don't lose hope. Again, advocate for your stories and for your story, and share it with doctors and with genetic specialists and anybody who's working and researching drugs and therapies right now. Something will come along, and I'm the living proof of that. I started with no therapy, and now I'm here talking to you today with an LDL of 150. So I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time until something will work for you. And lastly, I want to thank the FH Foundation, not only for the knowledge and the wealth of knowledge that they expose us to, and all the helpful relationships that they create within the medical community, but also for giving us a community for ourselves. It's really important to really find your tribe, and it's really important to find people like you, so like yourselves. And so thank you so much, and thank you so much for having this forum today.
Alina, I think your message of empowerment, I love what you said. You have to be the leader of your own healthcare, and also the importance of knowing your family history and looking for those red flags of early heart disease and stroke and high cholesterol. So thank you so much again for joining us. And now can we kick it over to Jaime to go ahead and tell us, what would your take home message be for all of us?
takeaway for me would be early diagnosis. Get tested. If you feel that you have a family history of high cholesterol, get tested. Get your kids tested. Early intervention is the key to a healthy future. Um, as soon as I found out of the situation that we had with my daughter, I got tested. All my kids got tested. My wife, we all have FH. You know, someone doesn't get FH if it doesn't come from somebody else. So that's the key. Talk to your doctors. I've learned that you actually have to be pushy sometimes. Doctors tend to just like Becky said. You go into the office, you have limited time. Talk to them. You know, explain yourself, and if you want something done, push it because y- only you can help yourself. And once you learn that you have FH, fight. Don't give up. Always fight for it. Like Alina said, there is plenty of resources out there, new medication coming out. What doesn't work for you now, there may be something else that's going to work for you in the future. Um, in at this point, we're sitting in with a lot of new things right now that are very hopeful. I mean, there's new things coming out very soon that are very hopeful, even for children. And like I said, there is a lot of things now that we choose not to do it. For example, apheresis. I chose not to do that, but that's my choice. And if I have to do that eventually, I will. But that's an option out there that it's also very, very helpful for treating people with high cholesterol. But again, the key is get tested. Get tested. It doesn't hurt. Get blood work. It's simple and it's quick. Once you know you have FH, don't give up. There's plenty of hope out there, and the FH is always there for us to link each other with medical specialists that will also guide us in the right way. Get tested. That's the key.
That's right. Early diagnosis and your message of hope for the future. So with that, thank you all so very much for sharing your powerful journeys toward FH diagnosis and care. And I'm going to now have Kat just give our closing remarks.
Thank you, everybody. That was just incredible. Thank you for sharing so much of yourselves with us today. Thanks, Amy, for a terrific job moderating. I want to make sure everybody knows that you can go to the FH Foundation, as everyone has said, for more resources. Visit our website at the fhfoundation.org. We also have specifically an homozygous FH community. You can join the homozygous FH community there for that unique connection. We have 2 Facebook groups. We have more than 2, but you can find everything there for the FH discussion group and also our newly launched lipoprotein little a discussion group. So please, we're here for you every day, and we appreciate you being here for us. And I really just want to thank everybody so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you.